So it's a very good day for SwetchaTV US. Today we have a special guest from USA, that is Dr. Manasa Raghavan, Assistant Professor in Chicago University in human genetics. She is working in the Department of Human Genetics. She came all the way from USA to Khammam to attend a workshop on what is that, archaeogenomics, archaeogenetics. So we have the very good opportunity to meet her, and some knowledge we can share. Okay, madam. So we need some introduction, a small introduction of yourself.
Sure. So first of all, thank you. I'm very excited to be here and hope to convey some of the exciting research we're all doing to your viewers through this medium. So as you've already mentioned, I'm a faculty in the University of Chicago. Most of my research has been in ancient DNA. It's a field, as you mentioned, paleogenetics. It's basically a way to read our genetics of our ancestors and connect how our genetic signatures as humans have evolved over time. So my group's research is particularly interested in understanding what really makes humans unique in the way that we are, in the way that perhaps we can adapt to different environments, the way we are susceptible to diseases, and we use DNA as a medium to study this, both from ancient and modern humans.
Okay. So is this the study of DNA, is it helpful to the future of this humankind?
Absolutely, because a lot of the insights we are developing help us gain some insights into, for example, disease susceptibilities, disease risks. What is it about perhaps the genetics of certain populations or certain communities that may make them, put them at increased risk for certain diseases? And some of these will invariably have an evolutionary, impact. And so a lot of what we're unraveling about humanity and our population genetic signatures will have an impact in terms of how we think about diseases, in terms of why certain populations may need to be monitored perhaps more closely because they may have certain genetic variants that put them at risk. It will also give perhaps clinicians and medical geneticists the tools to do genetic diagnosis and eventually treatments perhaps for some of these genetic disorders.
So, or the experiments going on this on DNA, genetical engineering or some sort?
Not in my lab. So we are more of a basic research lab. We do very much more from the evolutionary perspective. But we're hoping that a lot of the insights and data that we generate as part of our research will be useful for researchers who work more in the clinical and the medical side.
So medical side.
Yes.
Okay. So nowadays we are hearing about the study of these genes or DNA. It is useful to get the desired or designed babies. Is it possible?
There is definitely more technology today than there was perhaps 5 or 10 years ago. We're definitely doing a lot more in the biological, again, in terms of thinking about new ways of mutating DNA. And all of it is, of course, when you think about it, in the direction of how to make us all healthy eventually. That's the common goal. However, when it comes to things of this nature like designer babies, we do get into somewhat of an ethical dilemma.
Yes.
What does it mean, designer? Who gets to choose? How, should parents really decide what sort of traits the baby would have? Shouldn't it be sort of natural? And what are the side effects? What are the consequences? If everybody starts making their own designer babies, what does that mean for the natural genetic variation that we have? And also the ethics of this is, who gets to decide which trait is desirable and not? It's such a subjective feature. So there's a lot of ethical issues, which is why it's not technically legal to do that. You can definitely, for example, at the embryonic stages, parents can get genetically tested to see, for example, certain syndromes if their baby is at risk, and there are ways to mitigate that. But those are not equivalent to the designer baby sort of fashion, which is more about perhaps certain eye color, certain skin color,
so,
these sorts of things.
That's which height and
correct.
Physique and all that.
Yes.
Okay. So it may be possible in the future, but ethically
we have to think carefully about what the implications
so
will be.
there may be so many disadvantages also.
Correct, correct.
So,
Yes.
okay. Uh, and another thing, we have to leave some of the life to the nature also.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Otherwise, you will become robots and all that.
Absolutely, and yeah, we don't know what that impact would be eventually in the
Okay.
future. Yeah.
So, so what are the work you are doing in your university?
Yeah. So as I said, we are sort of a basic science lab. We are very inquisitive about human evolution. So a lot of the projects in my lab, which is what brings me to India often, is to understand the incredible genetic diversity that South Asians have.
Okay.
And so I'm collaborating very closely with a lot of researchers, including geneticists and archaeologists in India. And it's a lot of fun to come and work with them. And again, we go to different archaeological sites. We come to sort of, community regions like Khammam. And all the idea is to really partner with local communities, local researchers, and try to find ethical ways, community engaged ways of doing genetic research, which brings both the ancient archaeological DNA as well as DNA from modern living people in India.
So in India, the diversity of DNA is more.
Yes.
So so many traits are there, different traits are there, and there is so much of difference from north to south, we can
Yes.
say. So you have very variety of traits. It's okay. Did you came to any conclusion
Right.
about this one?
Right. So I'll speak from the field's perspective, also incorporating results from other researchers who have worked in India as well. So yeah, first of all, to echo you, India is incredibly complex because there's so many different layers of ancestries, and all of these genetic ancestries are thanks to thousands of years of intermixing, migrations, movements, including the colonization more recently. And so this is all shaped and brought in all sorts of genetic variation. And yes, you're absolutely correct that many of these genetic variations will show up as some sort of traits, whether it's physical traits or disease-related traits, whatever it is. And over time, there's definitely a lot of study, but a lot more needs to be done. But so far, what researchers are finding is that mostly populations in India living in the north and south of India, so excluding the northeast, who have a very different genetic and cultural history, but generally speakers of what we call the Indo-European languages and Dravidian languages, they have the genetic ancestries come from very similar sources, but the proportion of those sources may be slightly different, which may be accounting for some of the differences that we see. Of course, the other things to keep in mind is a lot of these traits that we are talking about, they're only partially heritable. So genes only controls a little part of those. A lot of the, for example, thinking about skin pigmentation or height and weight, a lot of these will be impacted by also the environment, the lifestyle that people live in. So for example, as you go closer to the tropics, you will have increased melanin production. It's needed for the absorption of vitamin D, and so you will have naturally pigmented skins versus the north, where you may not, lighter skins are more favored there for the absorption. And so these need to be kept in mind as well. It's not always fully genetic controlled. But to come back and wrap up this point, yes, so there are differences in the proportion of the genetic ancestries between the North and South Indian populations, but most of them share a lot of common ancestries over the last few thousand years.
Yeah. So are you conducting this type of workshops anywhere?
We are absolutely. So along with my collaborator, Dr. Neeraj Rai, who is a senior scientist in the Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleosciences. In fact, this year we completed a 4th annual workshop between scientists and archaeologists. So we have conducted this almost every year except for COVID years when we couldn't do it in person. And every year we conducted in different parts of India, north, south, northeast as well. And the whole idea of this is to actually bring all of these potentially collaborative fields together on the same platform. So far, we've all been talking and working in silo in our own fields, but with ancient DNA, it's absolutely important to bring that multidisciplinary angle together. And the only way to do that is for us to be in the same room and talk it out. What are the questions the archaeologists have? Can DNA answer them? if it can, how can we interpret it, and how can we put it back in the cultural context? So it's very important for us to crosstalk. So I'm very proud to say that Dr. Rai and I, and hopefully we can continue this tradition. And I think today this massively successful workshop in the university here, the college here, has also been a testament to this sort of interactions that we're really hoping that we can do more and more in India. For example, the audience here, the students who are from arts, science, the entire sort of span of disciplines, and I think I hope they had an enjoyable time as well, and we learned absolutely a lot from them, and hope we could also give a little bit back to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do you find any benefit of this type of projects?
Absolutely. Like I said, it's been such an eye-opening experience for me. I was born in India, but for a large part of my life, I have lived abroad. And to come back to sort of learning about my roots, but doing so with the communities, with the local researchers, it's just absolutely an inspiring and enriching process for me. I think science, the kind of science we do, is only going to be better if we do it together. There's no way that I can work by myself and get to the right conclusions, because I need the input of the other geneticists, the other archaeologists, the communities themselves, and only then can we actually come up with something that brings all the different strands of evidence together.
So, archaeogenetics.
Correct.
So, what will be its implementation?
So, as the name implies, it's absolutely a combination of archaeological studies and the genetics. So, exactly what we're doing is we're working across these two disciplines and trying to blend them together. So, the ability to get genetic information from individuals, a specimen from archaeological ancient contexts, and be able to put that genetic information in context of modern genetic diversity and see exactly how the DNA signatures have changed in a certain location over time. And that will tell us about who migrated in, who mixed with whom, maybe some people, some populations may have gone extinct over time. We can detect those. We can learn a lot about, again, traits and diseases, how they've come into certain populations. So all of these, we can start gaining very precise empirical evidence for these changes. And we're seeing a lot of that in Europe. So Europe has generated a lot of ancient DNA data, but in contrast to that, many other regions, including South Asia, unfortunately, have not yet gotten up to the stage of matching the levels of data, and there's various reasons for that, including the tropical nature of South Asia doesn't necessarily promote good preservation of DNA. But regardless, I think now work has started. It's very exciting, and hope the next generation can also take this forward.
Okay. So, by using this type of by taking up this type of projects, it may make a great change in the history of writing history. I think we can assume the history. Now we are assuming the history. We will get the evidences also, I think.
Absolutely. I think one way, that's a really great point. I think one way to look at it is that what we are doing from the genetic point of view here is we are providing one concrete biological line of evidence. Now, it may not always agree with the line of evidence from the cultural or even the oral histories of communities. In those cases, I think we shouldn't be distraught. We should ask ourselves, okay, why is it not matching? Could it be that culture has evolved separately to the genetics, or oral histories may say something different? Maybe they're talking about trade networks, and trade may not necessarily impact gene exchange. So I think that's exactly why I said that we should all work together, because many times they may agree, they may not agree.
So there should be
we should be looking at it together.
There should be some interaction between the historians and the genetical historians.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's what we are, genetic historians. We are looking into the past with the help of DNA, and we are providing one body of evidence, which may or may not agree. But if it doesn't agree, we shouldn't be forcing the culture and the genes to always say the same thing, because they may evolve at different rates. So
thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's my pleasure. Thank you.